Did you know that there are 74,000 pages and 4 million words to the CPA code? Can you believe that?
Yep.
Today, our guest is Jonathan George. He is a CPA with the George Cintron & Co. CPA LLC. And today's show is sponsored by Heyday Marketing, a public relations marketing agency based right here in Miami. I am your host, Anabel, live from the studios of Miami's Community News. And today, we're going to learn, because it is tax season, the importance of hiring a CPA. So let's get started. Why should we hire a CPA? First, I want to know a little bit about your history. How did you get involved with the field?
Sure. Well, my father was a CPA. He worked in public accounting for several years and then went into private, meaning that he was the in-house tax person for a company. So he pretty much guided me and advised me and let me know that being an accountant would be a pretty good career choice, a good basis in business overall, and that I would never be without a job. So
excellent. And is that true?
Steps. Yeah. So far, I haven't been without a job.
Yeah.
Since I've been a CPA.
That's right.
Yep.
And because it is tax season, as I mentioned earlier, the deadlines are in April 15th.
Yeah, March 15th for S corps and partnerships, and then April 15th for C corps and individuals.
And this is off subject because I don't have it on my notes, but how are you penalized if you don't do your taxes by that deadline?
So there's several different penalties. The one where if you don't file by the deadline is a failure to file penalty. And it's a bit more extreme than the other, which is failure to pay penalty. But there's also failure to make estimated payment penalties. So there's several different kind of penalties. But the worst one is out of the three that I just mentioned, is the failure to file penalty is the heftiest.
Okay. And from my understanding, you must file taxes whether you are an individual or a business owner by the same deadline.
So for the S corps and the partnerships, is March 15th. And then for C corps and individuals is April 15th. And for individuals, if I don't make any money or if I don't make above the threshold, whichever it may be, I think it's the equivalent to the standard deduction amount, then I don't need to file a return because I wouldn't owe any tax. Similarly, with partnerships, if there is no income, there's no requirement to file a return. But for S corporations and C corporations, regardless if there was any activity, they are required to file a return.
So that's very important for new business owners to know this information.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know this stuff. Absolutely.
So let's jump to talk about actually selling a business, since I did say business. So let's say you start a business within the year, you're not happy with the business or your partner, whatever the case may be, you want to sell that business. So what is the advantage of hiring a CPA?
So specifically when it comes to selling a business, there's two ways to do it. There's either an asset sale or a stock sale. So typically a seller is going to prefer a stock sale. They're going to want to sell you their stock in the company because to them that's a capital asset and they would get capital gains treatment, meaning a reduced tax. A buyer doesn't want to buy your stock. A buyer wants to buy your assets, and the reason for that is when you structure it as an asset sale, the buyer is able to obtain a stepped up basis, meaning they get it at whatever the asset was. Let's say it was one asset worth $1 million. They now get $1 million asset, regardless of the seller's basis in it. They get it at $1 million, and then they are now able to either amortize or depreciate that, and that gives them a deduction. Whereas on the inverse, if they were to buy the stock, you can't depreciate or amortize stock. It just sits there. So it's advantageous to a buyer to buy assets. It's advantageous for a seller to sell stock. So the best of both worlds would be to sell assets, but legally it would be considered a stock sale. So that's something that we do in the tax world, and that's called a 338H10 election. So it's really the best of both worlds. And there are several, especially older businesses this pertains to, because as your business grows, what also grows? Your client list, your goodwill, your reputation, and those are very valuable, right? You can have a business that has literally $1,000 computer, but the guy for 30 years has been such an all-star, has developed such good relationships with clients, et cetera, that he's selling the business for $2 million. You're like, well, $2 million, you have one computer? Well, all the goodwill and intangibles that he's generated, his client lists and his name, those things are valuable assets. And if he was to sell his stock and the guy buys stock, there would be no utilization or no additional deductions when it comes to that. It's kind of complicated, but if you talk to a CPA about it and they're in the know about it, it can save you buku bucks.
Really?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, because when it comes to starting a business, you don't really think I need to hire a CPA, but you handle all those things that you just mentioned, correct?
Yeah, we
so
handle
you
all
handle
of it.
all of it.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. Perfect. So now there's something called health insurance deduction. So explain to me a little bit about that. Explain to our viewers.
So the health insurance deduction I specifically mentioned is for self-employed people, and more specifically, I wanted to touch on the S corp shareholder health deduction. A lot of times I'll see a owner of an S corp pay their health insurance personally and not even associate that with a business expense, but it is a business expense. So the idea is for your S corp to pay your insurance provider directly. It would be considered wages to the owner, and it would be a deduction to the company, which is, you're thinking it's just a wash, right? Well, I have income, my company has an expense. What's the point? The point is that when the shareholder prepares or files their personal tax return, they're able to get a deduction for self-employed health insurance deduction that otherwise they would have forewent. And it's a dollar for dollar deduction. You don't have to itemize deductions. You can take a standard deduction and still have this. It's called an above the line deduction. And it's probably the easiest thing to do and quite frequently overlooked. And there's really, there's no expertise needed to do that. It's literally just calling and saying, hey, pay my insurance company directly. And now you can take the deduction on your personal return.
And that could be for an individual and for a company?
So this applies to owners of S corps. Well, what I'll speak to is owners of S corps and anybody that's self-employed, whether it be an LLC or S corp. If you're self-employed, it works.
Okay.
But what it is that it allows you in the partnership or the S corp to pay your premiums, and then when you file your personal return is where you get the deduction. That's where the magic happens, is on the personal return.
Oh, okay. And how about the reduction of self-employment tax? Is that included in there?
That's another aspect also related to S corps, and it's a tax strategy. It's a pretty simple one, but it's something that again can save you a lot of money. And the basics is, let's say, for an example, I'm a business owner, but I don't have any company. I'm just a sole proprietor, right? Or I'm an LLC, which is disregarded for tax purposes. Whatever I make, $100,000, I'm going to pay. This is all like in a nutshell. Stuff in real life is more complicated than this. This is just for purposes of an example.
Right.
If I made $100,000, I pay income tax and self-employment tax on the whole $100,000. If I was to be an S corp and my S corp made $100,000, and I decided to pay myself $50,000, then essentially I would be cutting my self-employment tax in half, because I would only be paying the self-employment tax on the $50,000 that went to me.
Got it.
So that right off the bat is a lot of savings. It gets a little more complicated in real world application, but that's the gist of it.
Okay. And I've heard horror stories in the past where people lie on their tax return information. They get all this money, especially with the COVID relief money. There's been a lot of people that have gone to jail because of it. So what are some things that alerts the government and says, wait a minute, this doesn't look right?
I mean, extraordinarily large deductions, deductions that don't seem to be in line with the nature of the business, several years of losses, and
what does that mean, several years of losses?
So, for example, if I'm a business owner and the last 3 years I've showed consistent losses, the IRS can then argue and say that you're not in this, you're not engaged in this to make profit. It seems like this is more like a hobby to you. So what they're trying to do is essentially disallow me from using those losses to offset other income. So, for example, if I have a W-2, right, and I make $100,000 on a W-2, but I open my side business as a YouTuber,
okay,
right, and I wrote off 30 grand of equipment, whatever, right? And then the next year I wrote off 10 grand and then 10 grand again. So I'm showing 30 grand loss, 10 grand loss, 20 grand loss. The IRS is going to be like, you're harvesting losses here. You're just trying to use these losses to offset your W-2. You need to show some income.
Oh, wow.
So I've had cases where get a new client and they have their own business and they've showed losses for the last 3 years. And when they come to me, I let them know that, and they've never heard of that before. It's called hobby losses.
Hobby losses. Wow, that is so interesting. And I mean, we live in a digital age, right? So everybody has some type of digital format hobby, including myself, right? So I do have expenses, but I never actually thought about including it in my, my tax return.
That's another point where, I mean, talking to a CPA, it gives you the peace of mind that, I mean, when I say CPA, that runs the gamut, right? I mean, just like any industry, you have good CPAs, you have great CPAs, you have mediocre, and then, it runs a spectrum. But a good CPA is going to know where to look, what questions to ask, and make sure that we're taking into account all the deductions. Because after all, that's what you're paying them for, right? You're not hiring a CPA so that you can pay more tax.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I've had my CPA. I may consider switching over since I met you. No, I have my CPA for years. Like, I just give her my W-2s, right? That's what, and then she just does it. She asks me a few questions, and it's easy. Yeah, like she doesn't do anything like crazy. Like, that's not good.
Yeah, the W-2s are very straightforward.
Yeah.
Right? If you have a W-2, there really is no room for any kind of consulting or planning, because there's really nothing you can do to get out of that. $100,000 W-2, that's $100,000 income to you. And I believe since 2018, there's no more employee unreimbursed expenses. So
interesting, really?
That was a big one, yeah.
So like dry cleaning fees?
Nothing.
Gas fee? No way.
Nothing. The only thing I think there is now is either there's a moving. You can deduct certain moving things only if you're a member of like the Army Reserve. Something very specific and ridiculous.
Yeah, because I'm a former Army wife.
Oh, yeah?
So, yeah, we got to itemize everything. Yeah. If the government already didn't pay us, which they usually do. So, technically, if we wanted additional itemization, we could add it. But the government was really good with that.
Yeah, so if you were reimbursed, then that's it.
Yeah.
You get your reimbursement.
But as an individual, for example, myself, okay, so I'm in this show today, and this is for me. So, so hair, makeup, like you said, dry cleaning, I cannot put those in my taxes.
Do you get paid W-2 or you get 1099s?
W-2 or 1099. I don't remember.
So if you were to get a W-2, you would think, at least with this industry that you're in, that maybe that they would reimburse you for those things.
Yes.
So
mostly they do.
All right, so then
I have a good boss.
Well, then you're covered then. So you don't have to worry about it.
So I don't have to worry about it and add it.
It's paid for you.
Huh, there you go.
But if you
can't double dip.
Yeah, exactly. If you had to come out of pocket, then you would kind of be in that tough situation where I would then say, hey, if this is for your job, then maybe discuss with your employer on maybe covering some of that cost for you.
Yeah, there's so many fine lines, and I think it's so important that somebody does consult with a CPA.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of people are probably not including things that they could include, and they're losing out on money.
Not to mention just information that people aren't even aware of. Like, everyone knows, okay, I need deductions to reduce income. Do you know what deductions, right? Do you know what rules? Do you know where to look? It's just like, when you're a self-employed person and have your own business, the universe is limitless with possibilities. You're not constrained to any kind of rules. I guess I shouldn't say rules, but there's so much to find out, and to essentially, there's a lot of thinking out of the box.
Right.
When it's not like a company where, like, I have assets and liabilities and they all need to tie. You know what I mean? There's just several opportunities to either make a bad move or a good move. And if you're not being guided properly, then unfortunately some of those bad moves you can't recover from, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely.
After all that gibberish.
Yeah, no, I got it. And it's important that you spell it out for us, especially for me. Like, this is not an area that I'm, very good at. So it's important, as much as you think it's easy for everybody, no, it's not. So the more you talk, the better it is for us. Mm-hmm. So now we'll pull up your website, because if somebody has inquiries, or if they want to hire you or consult with you, how much, if you want to say the prices, or is it customized depending on the individual?
So essentially, it's all customized. There's really
Okay.
no standard boilerplate because there's not one tax return that's identical to the next.
Okay.
What I will say is that, as I've mentioned in our BNI chapter, that for a person who just has W-2s and maybe an investment account, it's probably not the best fit for us because, as I mentioned, there's not really too much creativity or consulting that we can do there. It's kind of like, this is your income, this is what it is, and as I mentioned, you can't deduct any employee unreimbursed expenses.
Okay.
So it's going to be self-employed people
Okay.
and their individual tax return. So their business tax return and then their individual tax return.
So that's where you like really come into creativity and you specialize in that.
Absolutely.
Right? Okay.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
And the fees for I mean, the businesses, I mean, I would say the minimum is going to be probably like $700 all the way up to like $2,500, depending on the complexity.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, because for an individual tax return is like, well, I get a friends and family discount, it's like $175, I think.
And based on what you said, you have really like W-2s and maybe a couple other things.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is like maybe somebody here that has like 4 foreign companies. The amount of compliance and forms that need to be filed by that person compared to you is definitely not going to be 175.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So this is a big scale.
Oh,
we're not
yeah.
talking individual tax returns. We're
There's some returns that'll be this thick after you print them out.
Wow.
Absolutely, it gets kind of gnarly.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about foreign tax information. We're going to bring in Awilda. But before that, you are part of the BNI chapter for Coral Gables for Squeeze the Lemon. And so to my understanding, you're the only CPA on that.
Yeah.
So why is that important to be part of that chapter or just in general, the BNI?
I think it's not what you know, it's who you know, right? And that's very, very true. I always say that you could be the smartest person in the world and nobody knows you, you're not going to make any money.
Okay.
Right?
Very true.
And it's essentially, me personally, it was obviously to grow the business, but to grow the network too, and to also be more comfortable doing things like this, and speaking in front of people and in front of cameras, and just being more marketable and being in front of more people,
Right.
and advertising our services more.
And it's true what you said. And I'm the type of person, I may not know a subject completely, but I will sell on that relationship. This is the relationship that you build, and then you build trust, and then I'll hire that person, right?
Absolutely.
So that's awesome. And this is the BNI in case anybody wants to be part of this chapter.
Yeah,
they
we're
can go
open
on.
to members. Yep.
Okay.
We definitely are a growing chapter and need as many quality individuals, professionals as possible.
Perfect. And I think you already said it, but there's only one industry in this chapter.
Correct.
Right.
Only one person per industry.
Yep. Okay, that's excellent.
Which is awesome because you have no competition.
Exactly.
You don't have to worry about favoritism or anything. You know?
Right.
I like that aspect.
Is there a situation where all the BNIs come together?
Yeah, they actually have. I haven't attended one, but I think last year was in Spain, and then this year it's going to be in Hawaii.
Wow.
And then they also have like these are worldwide ones too.
Okay.
They also have just U.S. ones, and I think it's in Vegas. But BNI is like one of these things there's always something going on in BNI.
Yeah, it's the business network in international.
I think so.
International.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Industry. I was going to say industry. I think it's international.
I think it's international.
Yeah.
But if you do what you're supposed to do in BNI, I mean, I think they didn't have to sell me on it. Like I already knew that I wanted to join a chapter, and plant the seeds of relationships with people. I think if you do what you're supposed to do, you follow the plan, that there's only positive things that are going to happen.
I agree. I agree on that. Well, thank you so much, Jonathan
Absolutely.
George. Now we're going to bring in Awilda, which is your partner
Yes.
with the George and Cintron. So it's Jonathan George and Awilda Cintron
Yep.
with the & Co. CPA LLC. So we're going to bring her in. We're just going to swap seats, and then we'll bring
Absolutely.
Jonathan back in. And Awilda's going to talk to us in Spanish. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Welcome, Awilda.
Hi, thank you.
Entonces, we are going to speak in Spanish for our Spanish viewers. Maybe we could do a little bit of English and a little bit of Spanish,
Sure.
because we didn't touch on the foreign companies. So, explain to us the compliance process for CPA. Explícanos, ni sé cómo decir compliance en español.
Cumplimiento.
Sí, bueno, está bien.
I'm as good as you are.
Sí. El proceso para, ¿cómo se dice? Para compañías que quieren coger un CPA.
Ok, bueno, voy a empezar por las personas que quieren invertir dentro de los Estados Unidos, sea compañías o individuales. Pueden ser personas, pueden ser compañías.
Okay.
Nosotros, bueno, básicamente hacemos una consultoría y le explicamos a ellos cuáles son las opciones que ellos tienen dentro del rango de las regulaciones fiscales. Usualmente cuando las personas quieren venir a los Estados Unidos, es muy complejo por empezar y, bueno, llegan aquí y pues no tienen idea y necesitan esa consultoría para entender, lo hago a nivel personal, lo hago a través de la compañía, qué tipo de compañía puedo crear y pues nosotros hacemos lo que es entender qué quieren hacer aquí dentro de los Estados Unidos y plantearles a ellos cuáles son las opciones que tienen y cuáles son los cumplimientos, los requisitos fiscales. Es decir, cuáles son los formularios que hay que presentar, qué fechas tienen, porque como Jonathan explicó, hay fechas de límite el 15 de marzo y el 15 de abril, pero para personas individuales está el 15, disculpe, en junio hay una fecha de límite y también otra en diciembre. Entonces, es un poquito diferente para esas personas.
Sí, y esto es más como para compañías internacionales.
Hay dos tipos,
Okay.
¿verdad? Porque hay compañías internacionales que quieren hacer negocios dentro de los Estados Unidos.
Okay.
¿Sí? Y ellos pueden tener esa opción. O hay personas dentro de los Estados Unidos que, bueno, quieren invertir fuera. Entonces, nosotros hacemos ese tipo de consultoría para entender qué exactamente quieren hacer y cuáles son las opciones que ellos tienen.
Perfecto. Ahora, we're going to do it in English.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so the importance of hiring a CPA for persons that want to do business internationally and international businesses wanting to do business in the U.S.
So there's two different things, right? You have a person who is what we call a foreign investor, right? So we're just going to flip it and we're going to say you're a foreign individual, meaning that you live outside of the United States, you're not a citizen or a resident, you come to the U.S. and you want to open a company. It could either be for an operating business or it could be for investments like real estate. We basically, talk with or consult with the client and basically say, what is it exactly that you want to do? And here are your options, because the entity structures that are available to a U.S. person are not the same for a foreign investor, just because of the limitations that are involved in the IRS code. And then vice versa, if you're a U.S. person and you open a company outside of the U.S., well, you have to understand that there are compliance requirements, meaning are you filing the proper tax forms? Are you paying the taxes? So all of those things we kind of discuss with the both parties to make sure that they are filing according to the IRS rules.
That's excellent, because I'm sure that there are so many individuals that are confused with the compliance. So technically, a person wanting to do foreign business or vice versa, they hire a CPA before they even do that, because they need to know what paperwork to file, right?
Right.
So it's like you will be the CPA forever with that company, perhaps.
Hopefully,
Yes.
right?
Okay,
If you
that's
do
the
your
whole
job
goal.
right, yes.
Okay, that's the goal, because
Yes.
there's going to be things, like at the end of the year, you need to know what to file, what to put. But before that, it's important to see how you begin the business.
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake that people make is that they go out and they have this idea of what they want to do, and then they implement it, and then they seek a CPA without knowing what the risks are. Or I'm just going to give you a quick example,
Yeah.
something that happens often here in Miami. Foreign individuals come to the U.S. and they purchase a property in their name personally. Well, yes, that's fine. You can do that, but then down the road, you don't understand what the implications are. How does that affect you for tax purposes? If something happens to you and the property is inherited, you're going to have the estate tax, which could be up to 40% nowadays, on that property, forcing the person to sell the property so that they're able to pay that tax. And there's different structures that you can set in place to avoid that tax. So it's important to discuss what your ideas are with respect to investments and businesses before you actually execute them. Because once it's already done, in some cases, it can be undone, but it could be costly.
Absolutely. Especially, I mean, I don't know where there's space left in Miami.
Yeah, really.
There's a lot of real estate. Yeah, up, right? Keep going up. So there's so much real estate development. So even at the inception of buying land, a
Yes.
person should speak to a CPA.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in
Very
some
important.
cases, that's a symbiotic relationship with even an attorney, right? Because some of these
Correct.
things are, legal matters, and you want to make sure that you have a group of professionals that are going to guide you in the right direction.
Excellent. Wow, that's fantastic. And is there anything else you would like to address? You yourself, you're a tax accountant.
I am a tax accountant.
And how did you one day say, I want to do this?
Well, I don't think a lot of people wake up and say, or at a very young age,
Yeah.
this is when I want to be when I grow up. I kind of just fall into it, to be honest with
Okay.
you. Growing up, I loved numbers, but I didn't equate that to a tax accountant. But as I, just in my young adult life, got into, bookkeeping, and from bookkeeping to accounting, landed at a CPA firm. And it's just, you just want to grow and you want more and you want to learn more things and you want to help people. So one of the reasons Jonathan and I decided to merge together and have our own firm is just be able to explain to clients. Right? We noticed that, believe it or not, that piece right there was missing, just to educate the client. It's not just we're preparing a tax return, here you go, bye-bye. It's let me explain to you why this is this way, and how this flows to you personally and how it affects you, and why we think you should make this move versus the other. So that's the part of my job that I like.
I love that.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank
So
you.
we're going to also bring in Jonathan now, so it's going to be us three. And so we have Jonathan and Awilda. I'll put Jonathan here for perfect. Okay, so can you give them the website, or here, the middle shot, the website?
Yes, it's www.gctaxcpa.com. So you'll be able to see our services that we have, get a little bit of background about our company, and if you put in your information into the website, we'll be able to gather your information. But we're very hands-on. You can always just contact us directly. We'll pick up the phone call and just talk about a little bit about what we do if you're interested.
Beautiful. And there's a free consultation?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. So remember, the importance of hiring a CPA is because there are 70,000 pages to a U.S. CPA.
U.S. tax code. Yeah.
Yep, U.S. tax. That's insane. And 4 million words. And these two know it all. Yeah, well, thank you for watching. Again, today's show is sponsored by Heyday Marketing, a public relations and marketing agency based right here in Miami, Florida. I am your host, Anabel, live from the studios of Miami's Community News.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.